New York Islanders winger Anthony Duclair says he's ready to play and committed to the New York Islanders. We'll discuss his potential impact on the team if he stays healthy and plays well. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey, and we've got a lot on our plates today. Anthony Duclair making his first public statement since Patrick Roy benched him, called him out, and he took a leave of absence. And we'll talk about what he said and his potential impact on the team. We'll talk about the dynamic duo of Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal and how Patrick Roy may utilize them. And we'll answer one mailbag question today about a formerly highly regarded New York Islanders prospect. That and more coming up on today's show. Let's talk about the Anthony Duclair situation. Duclair, as we know, had a very disappointing first season with the New York Islanders. He was scheduled to be on the top line with Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal. That lasted all of 5 games before he got hurt. And when he came back from the groin injury, he was really a shell of his former self. Ended up playing in 44 games, had 7 goals, 11 points, was a minus 15. And just did not seem to have that spark, that burst, the speed that is the cornerstone of his game, even after he returned. Now, I give Duclair some credit for trying to play through the injury, probably did come back a little sooner than maybe he should have, but at the same time, he just did not seem to be playing well at all upon his return. And eventually, you got to a situation where Patrick Roy called him out and, publicly in the media, and Duclair walked away from the team, missed the final 8 games. Now, he did that with Roy's blessing after they spoke. And, Patrick Roy, since that incident, has indicated that he wishes he wouldn't have said what he said publicly the way he did. And I think that's a key thing. And Roy said he hasn't spoken to Duclair since Duclair left the team late last season. But part of that is because he wants to speak to the Duke in person, doesn't want to do it over the phone. I respect that. I hope they get to speak sooner rather than later. So Duclair had his first extended public appearance earlier this week. And, he was pretty forthcoming about everything and sort of where he stands. But it really ends up becoming a question of how to deal with this situation. And Duclair says, I'm an Islander. I am ready to, give myself to this team and say, do all the things I need to do to contribute to this team. I love playing here. He's saying basically all the right things under the circumstances. But at the same time, you really need to see more from him. And if you don't, all of that is not going to matter. I mean, here's part of what Duclair said. He said, the Islanders right now are my team. I love them. I love playing for them. I love the fans. We got a great hockey rink. It's been a joy, and I'm looking forward to a great season, and I'm looking forward to bouncing back and hopefully getting into the playoffs. That's part of the big takeaway. The other thing that you may notice if you were able to watch the interview, he's grown a beard and a mustache. The hair seems to be growing out. So, again, Duclair going back to his old look, it appears, something he could not do last year. But here's the thing about Duclair. He had a 31-goal season as recently as 2021, 2022. He's gone over 20 goals in a season on 3 other occasions. There is no doubt that he is capable of being in the Islanders' top 6. And part of the reason for that is the Islanders are not very deep on the wing. But a healthy Anthony Duclair is, he scored 24 goals in 2023-2024 when you combine his stats with Tampa Bay and San Jose. He is capable of producing offense if he's capable of playing his game. And part of that game is based on speed and burst and acceleration and anticipation. And obviously with the groin last year, that anticipation, that burst wasn't there. And he has to get himself back on track. One of the things about Anthony Duclair that I think led Lou Lamoriello to sign him was that he has enough speed to stay and work effectively with Mathew Barzal. And there aren't a lot of Islanders players who fit that description. This team, if they can get Duclair to be a great line mate with Barzal, we saw a little bit of it in the preseason last year and in the first 4 or 5 games before Duclair got hurt, that he's capable of staying with Barzal and working with Barzal. So you then get a situation where you could have Jonathan Drouin and Bo Horvat on their top line, Anthony Duclair and Mathew Barzal on your second line. Then there's, the third winger on each of those lines can be determined later. But again, there is potential to work with there. Now, obviously, none of this means anything if Duclair doesn't rededicate himself and patch things up with Patrick Waugh and play better than he did after the injury last year. He does have a full no-trade clause this year. At the end of this season, on July 1st, that goes down to a 16-team modified no-trade clause. So we'll see, how it all plays out. But I'll say this. If Anthony Duclair can have a 20-plus goal season, give me 20 goals, 50 points, or better, it could have a big impact on the Islanders' offense and potentially on their power play because he is a proven power play player. You give a guy with speed and burst more time and space to operate, good things can happen. I will say that a bounce back season by Anthony Duclair could very well be one of the bigger factors in the Islanders' offense improving this year. You need Jonathan Drouin to stay healthy. You need, obviously, Mathew Barzal to stay healthy. But if you can get a solid, productive season from Anthony Duclair, you've got more potential offense because Simon Holmstrom could take another step forward, and that would add another dimension. If Anders Lee can stay in the 25 goal plus range, that could really help. If Jonathan Drouin stays healthy, you've got the makings of better. I'm not going to say great, but I could say a better, deeper, more rounded, well-rounded offense than what the Islanders put out there last year. So it will be important to see Anthony Duclair play better. And look, I am not sitting here telling you that Anthony Duclair is the solution to the Islanders' problems long term. I am not saying he is an all-star or somebody who is going to be one of the best players in the league, but he can be productive. He can give you solid minutes in the middle six, probably on the second power play unit. And if he can give you that 20-50, 20-45 season, 20 goals, 45 points, 50 points, it can have an impact on the Islanders' offensive productivity this season. All right, we've got more to get to on today's show. We're going to talk a little bit about the duo of Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal and how that may play out this season. We're going to answer a mailbag question about Ruslan Ishkakov and his potential fit in a Patrick Roy system. All that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. You could place a bet on who you think the NFL MVP should be this year. A lot of quality candidates out there. Or how about your Super Bowl champion? Or maybe you want to do a division winner parlay. Hey, you could probably get some really good odds on either the Jets or the Giants to make the playoffs. So check all of that out at FanDuel. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. So, Bo and Barzy, they have been a dynamic duo for the New York Islanders over the last couple of seasons. And last year, again, Mathew Barzal limited to 30 games for the whole season, did not play enough to really help the team and wasn't playing great when he was on the ice, wasn't up to his usual productivity. But they do have some chemistry. But we also know, according to Matthew Darche and Patrick Roy, that Barzal is going to go back and primarily play center again after being on the wing for the last couple of seasons. And a couple of thoughts about that. I've heard people make certain comparisons, and by no means am I saying that the duo of Mathew Barzal and Bo Horvat even comes close to the talent and productivity of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl up in Edmonton. But what I think that duo can do is serve as a model. And we all know, everydayers understand that Patrick Waugh, and we've talked about it on the show many times, loves to mix and match his line combinations. Lines don't stay together even for a full game, let alone for a week, a month, a season. So I think it is very, very possible, in fact, even likely, that while Bo Horvat will probably start the season as the 1C and Mathew Barzal the 2C, or maybe you flip that, but either way, while they probably both start the season at center and on different lines, it doesn't mean that that will remain the case all the time. And much like we saw with McDavid and Draisaitl, I think it is realistic to say if the Islanders are down a goal late in the game, could Patrick Waugh say to Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal, hey, it's you guys and fill in the winger, Anders Lee, Anthony Duclair, Jonathan Drouin, Holmstrom, whoever it is you want to put out there, you can, in fact, you could put two of them out there if you pull the goalie. But my point is, if you're desperate for a goal, can you see Bo and Barzy being reunited for a few shifts in the last 5 or 6 minutes of a game? Absolutely. Same thing with the power play. I can easily see whether Mathew Barzal plays the point or plays the wing on the power play. I could see Bo and Barzy being reunited with the extra attacker. And what you're doing in this case is giving Patrick Waugh more options and more weapons. You've got guys like Kyle Palmieri and Anthony Duclair and Jonathan Drouin who have a lot of power play experience. But when you really need a goal, whether it's on the power play or late in a game, to be able to put two of your top offensive weapons, Barzal, who is by far the best skater and playmaker on this team, among forwards at least, and Bo Horvat, who is probably your most reliable goal scorer as of right now among your forwards. Maybe Anders Lee would be considered ahead of him, maybe not, depends who you ask, when you ask. But my point is, if you can unite those guys, it makes it more difficult for an opposing coach who wants to mix and match defensive combinations and lines. You want to mix and match lines, and, one shift you got Bo and Barzy together, then you separate them and you don't know you want to put your top defensive pair out there against Bo or Barzy. It does create potential matchups, and a smart coach can manipulate those matchups so that you may end up with Bo and Barzy out there on the ice where the opposing team's top checking forward line or top defensive pair was out there the shift before, and you got that advantage as far as matchups go. So I like that option of making Bo and Barzy a poor man's version of McDavid and Draisaitl. Guys who are not typically going to be on the same line at the same time, but who could be reunited at any time when you need a goal, when you want to create a mismatch or a favorable matchup. All of that can be on the table. And I have to say, I understand why you may want to move Mathew Barzal back to center. I get it. There are some reasons I think it doesn't make sense right now, but there are reasons that it does. But I think having the flexibility to be able to unite those guys when you really need them. And when you really need that big goal late in the game makes a lot of sense. So I love the chemistry that Bo and Barzy have demonstrated over the last couple of years. They seem to play better when they're on the same line than when they're separated. I mean, if you look at Bo Horvat's statistics from a year ago, the injury to Mathew Barzal, it did affect him. I think, 28 goals is about right for Bo Horvat, a little less than he had the last couple of seasons, but the 57 points is lower as well. And not having Barzy out there definitely affected the productivity of Bo Horvat. Now, whether or not Jonathan Drouin can pick up some of that slack, and then you mix in the occasional, Bo and Barzy reunited for a few shifts, it just gives you more possibilities if you're Patrick Roy. And again, hopefully the Islanders' offensive productivity can increase. So Bo and Barzy, they're not going to start the year off, but I do think they will both see time as line mates sometimes, whether it's late in games or on the power play. And we'll see if Patrick Roy can take advantage of the potential that duo can give him in certain situations. We have got more to get to on today's show. We're going to answer a mailbag question about Ruslan Ishkakov. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day, a big defenseman from Cranbrook, British Columbia, who was with the Islanders in the mid-2000s. We'll talk about him and his impact on the team. All that coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need to hire like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly where Indeed Sponsored Jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. So we go back to the mailbag. Always enjoy going to the mailbag. This one is from Mike in North Carolina, friend of the show. Always good to hear from him. He says, with regard to Ruslan Ishkakov, I just read he wants to return to North America after next season, and the Islanders will still have his contract rights. Do you think he'd fit in with Darsh's plans and Roy's system? Two different questions. And Mike, thank you for the question. As far as Roy's system, and let's start with that out of the two options. Yes, I think he could fit in. Again, Roy wants to play a fast-paced game. He wants to possess the puck. He wants to move the puck. These are all things that Ruslan Ishkakov has proven he can do at the AHL level. Can he do it at the NHL level against bigger, faster, stronger opponents? That remains to be seen. But as far as Ishkakov's style of play fitting in with what Patrick Roy wants to do, yeah, I could see him being a good fit in that regard. But then you have the other question. What about the plans of new general manager Mathew Darsh, who did not draft Ishkakov, has no connection to him and probably will not see him play live, at least, before having to make a decision next offseason about whether or not to sign Ishkakov, trade Ishkakov, or just let him stay in the KHL. It really is going to depend on a lot of factors. And everydayers will remember we talked about the increased depth that this team has. They still lack top-end forward talent, but the depth is greater. There are three players who are not going to, 3 or 4 players who are NHL caliber who probably will not start the season on the roster or will be black aces. Guys who are up in the press box more often than they are on the ice. Will Cole Yzerman be joining the Islanders next year? We don't know. How does Anthony Duclair do this year? How does Jonathan Drouin do this year? Does Maxim Shabanov prove himself to be an NHL player? All of these, Danny Nelson, is he ready? There are a lot of variables that need to be considered before we can say whether or not Ishkakov would fit into Darsh's plan. I think he has the potential to do that, but will there be room for him on this roster? How many trades will be made between now and, let's say, a year from now? It's a little too early to say definitively, but I think that Darsh, depending on who else, is on this team, could give a chance to Ruslan Ishkakov. We have to see whether or not he ultimately does that. And again, a lot's going to happen in the next year. How many draft picks are ready? How many prospects are ready? Is J.G. Pajot traded? Is Anders Lee back? You need a spot for the guy. We don't know whether or not we'll have it. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And, Tuesday was the 49th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Brad Lukowich, the native of Cranbrook, British Columbia, a 4th-round pick of the Islanders back in 1994, but he made his NHL debut with the Dallas Stars in 1997-98, won a cup in Dallas in 1999, later played for the Lightning and won a cup there in 03-04, but joined the Islanders after the lockout in the 05-06 season, played 57 games with the Isles, had a goal and 13 points, 32 penalty minutes, then was dealt to New Jersey. He played for New Jersey, played a second stint with Tampa Bay, San Jose, Vancouver, and then a second stint in Dallas. Overall for Lukowich, 658 NHL games, 23 goals, 113 points, 369 penalty minutes, add a goal and 6 points in 71 playoff games. None of those with the Islanders. Lukowich, always a physical defensive defenseman, never a goon by any stretch, but always a guy who his primary job was defensive. We look at one of his better games with the Islanders, November 26, 2005 at the Wachovia Center in Philadelphia. Islanders and Flyers. Garth Snow, the Islanders goalie, and Tero Niittymaki, the goalie for Philadelphia. And in this game, it's 2-2 after 2 periods. And early in the third, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Brad Lukowich, scores his first and only goal as an Islander. Mark Parrish has the assist. It turns out to be the game winner. Islanders get an empty net goal from Jason Blake to complete a hat trick and end up beating Philadelphia by a score of 4-2. Brad Lukowich had a goal. He was a -1. He had 3 shots on goal. Played a little over 20 minutes and 5 seconds. But his goal turned out to be the game winner. Brad Lukowich, a solid defensive defenseman who played on a couple of Stanley Cup winners. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off-season. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. You can find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR-VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we are back on Friday. We'll have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings as we get closer and closer to training camp. Again, keep those mailbag questions coming. We are always happy to get to those, especially during the off season. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. Thank you for listening and watching the Locked On Islanders podcast. And of course, let's go Islanders.